He slid the hotel folio across the counter and said, "Thanks for covering this, Mom," as casually as if he were asking me to pass the salt. That one careless sentence sliced through the warm Sunday morning air inside the lobby and settled in my chest like something cold and sharp. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the bill he pushed toward me, the long white slip with numbers that didn't belong to me, and listened to the soft clinking of breakfast dishes from the restaurant behind us. Before you begin, take a deep breath. This is the kind of story that reminds you why silence is sometimes a woman's strongest weapon. Don't skip a second. My son didn't notice my silence. He didn't even look back at me. He just turned to his wife, who was adjusting her sunglasses even though we were indoors, and whispered something that made her smile, quick and smug, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. I felt my pulse slow down instead of speed up, the strange calm that comes when your heart chooses steadiness over hurt. I knew that feeling well. My father used to call it the quiet before the real truth shows itself. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and fresh coffee, the kind hotels brew by the gallon. A little boy ran past me dragging a stuffed dog by the ear, nearly bumping into my legs. His mother apologized, breathless, rushing after him. I nodded politely. That tiny interruption kept me grounded, reminded me of the years I carried my son the same way, guiding him gently, hoping he'd grow into a man who knew gratitude. But people choose who they become. My hopes didn't matter. The front desk clerk cleared her throat softly. "Ma'am," she asked with a practiced smile, "will you be settling the full balance today?" My son heard her. He definitely heard her. But he pretended he didn't. He took a deliberate step away from the counter, placing his hand on his wife's back as though the conversation no longer included him. My daughter-in-law leaned her hip against the desk and glanced at me with raised brows, as if waiting to see whether I would refuse, argue, or embarrass myself right there on the marble floor. But they both misread the stillness in me. I reached for the bill without a word. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. Instead, something old and steady rose in me. The same composure I'd learned watching my father negotiate with men twice his size, never raising his voice but always holding the real advantage. They never knew until the end that he was 10 steps ahead. I tucked that memory close to me like a hidden coin in my pocket. I pulled out my card and set it gently on the counter. My silence made my daughter-in-law shift uncomfortably. She expected a scene. She always liked scenes. She fed on them, turning everything into a performance. My lack of reaction robbed her of the spotlight. "That's really nice of you, Mom," she said with a sweetness that wasn't sweetness at all. "You know we appreciate it." She didn't appreciate anything. She spoke like someone secure in the belief that I would always pick up receipts, always say yes, always make things easier for her and the son she believed she could control better than I ever did. The clerk took my card and ran it. "It'll be just a moment," she said softly. The printer hummed. A faint breeze drifted in as the entrance doors slid open automatically for arriving guests. A couple walked in laughing, arms full of shopping bags, smelling faintly of expensive perfume. Life went on normally around us while my son kept glancing at his watch, eager to escape before I said something that might inconvenience him. My chest tightened, not with anger but with the kind of ache that comes from recognizing someone you raised but no longer recognize at all. When the clerk handed my card back, she smiled kindly. "All set, Mrs. Peterson." Hearing my last name spoken with respect felt like a small anchor in a moment meant to unsettle me. My father would have liked that. "Thanks," I murmured, tucking the receipt into my purse. My son exhaled, relieved the uncomfortable part was over. He reached for his wife's hand. "We should get going," he said. "Mom will call you later." He had no intention of calling. He said it every time he wanted to leave a scene without guilt. "Drive safe," I said simply. My daughter-in-law flashed another smile, one meant to look warm but was cold around the edges. "It was such a nice weekend," she said. "We should do these more often." I didn't return her smile. I only nodded. They turned away, already laughing at something I wasn't meant to hear. Their voices grew faint as they crossed the lobby floor toward the revolving door. The morning sunlight cast a glow on the glass as it spun them out to the sidewalk. I stood there for a long moment, letting the silence settle around me. My ribs felt tight, my shoulders heavy, but my mind was strangely clear. That was when I heard it. "Mrs. Peterson?" A soft, elderly voice, warm in a way I hadn't heard all weekend. I turned around. An older woman in a navy uniform stepped out from behind the side desk near the concierge stand. Her hair was silver, pulled into a neat bun, and her glasses hung on a thin chain around her neck. She gave me a look that wasn't the polite, practiced customer service smile. This one held recognition. A flicker of memory. Something intentional. Yes. I answered cautiously. She approached with small, steady steps. I'm sorry to stop you. My name is Evelyn. I worked with your father many years ago. At his firm. She paused, studying my face. You look just like him. The lobby noise seemed to fade for a moment. My father? Here. I hadn't expected his name today of all days. I'm sorry, I said slowly. I'm not sure I understand. She opened her palm. And there it was. A small cream-colored envelope sealed, my name written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. My breath caught. He left this with me before he passed, she said gently. He told me, when my daughter comes here someday, make sure she gets this. I felt a strange shift under my skin, as though the world had tilted slightly. A message from my father, waiting all this time? For me? For this exact place? I reached out and took the envelope, the paper thick and slightly yellowed at the edges. The handwriting pulled me back decades. To the man who taught me how to see through people without letting them see through me. Thank you, I whispered. Evelyn nodded as if she understood more than she said. He trusted you, she murmured. More than you know. Before I could ask another question, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Too quick, too pointed to be random. I turned. My daughter-in-law stood a few feet away, her sunglasses pushed on top of her head now, eyes narrowed with sharp curiosity. She wasn't smiling anymore. What's that? She asked, nodding toward the envelope in my hand. She tried to mask the edge in her voice, but she wasn't good at hiding greed. Not from me. Not after all these years. It's personal, I said, slipping the envelope into my purse before she could lean close enough to see anything else. She hesitated, glancing back toward the doors where my son waited. He told me to get you. We forgot something. I didn't move. She shifted her weight, clearly irritated by my stillness. We're in a hurry, you know. Yes, I said calmly. You usually are. Her lips tightened. There it was, the first crack in her confidence. She didn't like not knowing. She didn't like not seeing. She didn't like that something involving me didn't involve her. What did she give you? She asked again, softer this time, pretending concern. Before I could answer, my son appeared behind her, breathless. Mom, what's going on? I looked at both of them, the two people who had just walked out laughing while I paid for their weekend, and placed my hand protectively over my purse. Nothing you need to worry about, I said. And for the first time that morning, neither of them knew what to say. And for a brief, suspended moment, the three of us just stood there in that quiet corner of the lobby, sunlight spilling across the polished tile like a stage light placed at my feet. I tightened my hold on my purse, feeling the edge of the envelope press lightly through the fabric. That small pressure gave me an unexpected steadiness, almost like my father was nudging my hand from somewhere unseen. My son and daughter-in-law exchanged a quick look, a silent conversation passing between them. Irritation, curiosity, maybe even suspicion. I could read them both clearly. Years of observing their subtle glances had trained me well. They weren't worried about me. They were worried I might be holding something they weren't meant to see. I'd like a moment, I said quietly, not raising my voice, not letting it tremble. Just go on ahead. I'll catch up. My son opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but the tone in my voice made him hesitate. That alone felt unusual. He was so used to steamrolling my preferences that hearing a boundary, even a gentle one, seemed to disrupt his rhythm. We'll wait by the door, he finally muttered, though the frustration in his voice betrayed his forced politeness. He tugged at his wife's arm, guiding her toward the exit. She resisted for half a second, craning her neck to try and glimpse my purse again, but he pulled her away with enough firmness to end it. They stepped outside, the glass doors closing behind them with a soft hiss. Only then did I exhale. I moved to one of the side seating areas, a row of comfortable armchairs tucked beside tall indoor plants. The greenery smelled faintly earthy, mixing with the scent of brewed coffee drifting from the small cafe across the lobby. A quiet hum of conversation rose and fell around me. A couple talking about their flight, a businessman tapping on his laptop, a family debating which tourist spot to visit next. Ordinary sounds. Calming sounds. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. The paper felt thick, expensive, the kind my father always preferred. He hated flimsy stationery. If you're going to put something important in writing, he used to say, use something that lasts. My fingers traced the edges, feeling the slight roughness of the seal. His handwriting, that familiar measured script, stared back at me. My name. Just my first name written like he always wrote it when he wanted my full attention. I took a deep breath and slid my thumb under the seal. The paper opened with a soft tear, one that somehow made my heart tighten. Inside was a folded letter and several documents clipped neatly together. The letter was on his company letterhead, Peterson and Morgan Accounting Services. I hadn't seen that logo in years. It made my chest ache with a mix of nostalgia and something heavier, something like guilt for having let life pull me so far away from the person I used to be when he was alive. I unfolded the letter slowly. My girl, it began. My father never used flowery language. He wasn't a man of poetry. But the way he wrote that simple phrase softened something inside me instantly. I sat back, letting the sunlight fall across the page. If you are reading this, then life has brought you to a moment where you need strength. Not from others but from yourself. And you have more of it than you realize. I blinked, swallowing hard. The lobby around me grew quieter even though people were still moving. It felt like his voice was pulling me into a small, private space where only he and I existed. I have left certain matters in your name. Not as a burden. As a safeguard. When you know, you will know. You always had good judgment. Better than mine at times. A small, shaky laugh escaped me. My father had rarely admitted to being wrong about anything. Reading that made the back of my throat sting. I turned to the clipped documents. The first page listed assets. Modest ones, nothing extravagant but steady. A small property he owned outright. A handful of investments in local businesses he quietly supported. A few accounts labeled deferred, which I recognized as something he probably prepared long before retirement. They weren't enormous amounts, but they were intentional. Every entry had my name next to it. But what caught my breath wasn't the value. It was the care. The preparation. The foresight. My father had put layers of protection around things meant for me, structuring accounts so they couldn't be accessed by anyone else, naming me beneficiary on documents I never knew existed. And tucked behind those documents was something smaller. A folded receipt dated just 2 months before he passed. Not a financial receipt, a dry cleaning tag for his old briefcase. I frowned slightly. Why would he keep that? My father wasn't sentimental, not outwardly. If he attached meaning to something, it was usually for a practical reason. My pulse quickened, not with excitement but with the steady rise of questions. Questions I didn't know to ask before. Questions I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. I folded everything back into the envelope and pressed it against my chest for a moment. The weight of it felt reassuring and unsettling at the same time. Then I heard a voice. Mom. I looked up. My son had returned inside without his wife. He approached slowly, hesitation in every step. That alone surprised me. He rarely hesitated with me. He usually just assumed I'd bend. What is it? I asked. He pointed to the seat beside me. Can I sit? It was such a simple question, but somehow it felt too late, like he was borrowing a courtesy he hadn't earned. Go ahead, I said. He sat with a sigh, rubbing his hands together nervously. We didn't mean for it to seem like we were taking advantage earlier. The fact that he said seem instead of be told me everything. It's fine, I said flatly, not offering comfort. You two made your choice. He shook his head. No, we didn't choose anything. He stopped, looking frustrated. We're under a lot of pressure right now. That much I already knew without him saying it. Their spending habits were impulsive. Their priorities always seemed misaligned. But hearing him say pressure made me wonder if something else was going on. Something deeper, something hidden. What kind of pressure? I asked. He immediately stiffened. It's personal. I almost laughed. He wanted privacy while standing on the ruins of mine. Well, I murmured, we all have personal matters. He tapped his foot anxiously, the rhythm uneven and tense. Mom, what did that woman give you? There was not concern, curiosity, impatience, a hint of fear. It was from your grandfather, I said simply. Something he left for me. My son's eyes darted to my purse. Can I see it? No, I said calmly. His jaw clenched. Why not? Because it wasn't addressed to you. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. He wasn't used to hearing no from me. Not like this. Not with such clarity. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. You're being dramatic. I'm being private, I corrected. There's a difference. He rubbed his forehead, annoyed. Look, Mom. You know Dad didn't leave anything for me. And now, he gestured vaguely. I just want to know if Grandpa did. My stomach dropped slightly, not because he asked, but because of how he asked. He didn't ask what my father left because he cared about my connection to him. He asked because he wondered what he might someday take from me. I'm not discussing it, I said firmly. He stared at me, his eyes narrowing, the mask slipping for a moment. Since when do you keep secrets from your family? I met his gaze steadily. Since my family started keeping them from me. His face changed. A flash of something sharp, startled, defensive. Before he could speak again, the revolving door spun, and his wife stepped back into the lobby, looking irritated. There you are, she snapped. I've been standing out there freezing. My son stood up automatically. She noticed my purse, the way I held it close, and her eyes narrowed again. What did you two talk about? She asked. Nothing, I replied. She didn't believe me. I could see it in the tightness around her mouth. My son exhaled loudly. Let's just go. They walked ahead, whispering furiously. I could feel the tension between them. The suspicion, the impatience, the hunger for information they weren't getting. I stayed behind for a moment, pressing the envelope closer to me. Whatever my father meant to protect. I could feel it beginning to shift the ground beneath my feet. And neither of them had any idea what kind of truth they had just stepped into. I could feel the weight of the envelope against my side as I stepped outside, the cool morning air brushing against my cheeks. Whatever truth my father had placed in my hands, I knew I couldn't carry it with the same passiveness I'd shown for years. The moment the lobby doors closed behind me, I saw my son and daughter-in-law walking ahead, their heads bent together in a hurried conversation. They didn't notice me. They didn't look back. That small detail told me more about our relationship than any argument ever had. I didn't call out to them. I didn't try to catch up. Instead, I paused near the curb and let a taxi pass, the scent of exhaust mixing with the faint sweetness of a vendor's roasted nuts from across the street. The city moved on around me. Cars honking, people rushing, a dog barking at a passing bicycle. But for the first time in a long while, I felt entirely separate from the chaos. Detached. Observing, not absorbing. I pressed the envelope more firmly against my ribs. My father's handwriting seemed to whisper through the paper. You always had good judgment. I hadn't felt like a woman with good judgment for years. Not when it came to my son, at least. But something about that letter had stirred a quiet strength. The kind I once had before I allowed their needs to eclipse my own. I didn't follow them to the car. I turned the other way. The attorney's office wasn't far. 2 blocks, maybe 3, but the walk felt like its own small declaration. Each step steadied me, warming me from the inside despite the chilly gusts. My coat fluttered behind me, tapping my legs with every stride. I passed a bakery where fresh bread was being set on the racks. The yeasty scent drifted outside, mixing with the bitterness of city coffee. A memory rose unexpectedly. My father bringing home warm rolls on Sunday mornings, placing them on the table as though abundance were something he could create out of thin air. By the time I reached the attorney's building, a dull ache had formed behind my ribs, not painful, just full. Heavy with decision. The lobby here was quiet, cleaner, smelling faintly of pine cleaner and winter coats. I pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open with a faint chime and I stepped inside alone. The mirrored walls reflected me from several angles. My hair slightly windblown, my expression more resolved than I remembered seeing in years. When the elevator opened on the 4th floor, I walked down the familiar hallway lined with framed degrees and photographs of the city. My attorney's door stood halfway down, the frosted glass etched with his name. I knocked once before entering. He looked up from his desk, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Mrs. Peterson," he said warmly. "You're here earlier than expected. Everything all right?" I closed the door softly behind me. "I need to update my documents," I said, my voice calm but firmer than he'd ever heard from me. He gestured for me to sit. "Of course. What would you like to change?" I opened my purse, letting the envelope rest inside untouched. "Everything," I said. "I want to revise my will, adjust the beneficiaries, and make changes to my financial authorizations." He nodded slowly, clasping his hands. "All right. Let's go through it step by step." For a moment I hesitated, not because I doubted the decision, but because speaking it aloud felt like crossing an invisible threshold. I watched the snowflakes beginning to fall past the window behind him, soft and slow, as if the world outside were settling into a gentle hush to match my thoughts. "I want to leave everything to my granddaughter," I said. He blinked in surprise, not disapproval, just curiosity. "Not to your son? Or jointly?" "No," I replied. "Only her." He studied my face, reading the conviction there. "Understood." He opened a new document on his screen, the faint tapping of his keys filling the room in a steady rhythm. I felt myself breathe deeper, not out of relief but clarity. A door closing. Another opening. "And," I continued, "I want to revoke the secondary authorization on my accounts." He glanced at me. "The one your son uses?" "Yes," I said simply. He typed another note. "Anything else?" I hesitated again, then reached deeper into my purse. I took out a different envelope, not my father's but one from my son's earlier years. Inside were the loan documents, the small business loan I co-signed for him 5 years ago, trusting he would keep his word and pay responsibly. He hadn't repaid a single installment. I placed the documents on the desk. "I want to freeze this loan," I said. "Immediately." The attorney's eyebrows lifted a fraction. "That will require him to begin payments right away, or the bank will pursue him." "I understand." He paused, studying me. "May I ask, are you sure?" I nodded. "More sure than I've been about anything in a long time." He accepted that answer and began drafting the formal request. As he typed, I found myself looking out the window again. The snow had begun to stick along the ledges, thin white lines gathering like chalk marks. A woman on the street below pulled her scarf tighter around her neck, her small dog hopping across the icy patches. Everyday life. Ordinary moments. And yet here I was, reshaping my future one paper at a time. When the attorney finished typing, he turned the monitor slightly so I could review the changes. I read every line carefully, feeling each decision settle into me like bricks forming a wall that had waited years to be built. "Everything looks correct," I said. He printed the documents, placed them neatly in front of me, and handed me his pen. I picked it up slowly. It felt heavier than any pen should feel. Not burdensome, just significant. When I signed the first document, a sensation flickered through me. Something like loss, something like relief, something like reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't realized was scattered. Page after page, signature after signature, I felt the pieces align. When we finished, he gathered everything promptly. "I'll process these today," he said. "Is there anything you'd like your son notified about yet?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded, understanding without pressing for details. I thanked him and stepped back into the hallway. The building felt warmer now, though the temperature hadn't changed. As I waited for the elevator, I loosened my coat and inhaled deeply. For the first time in years, my lungs expanded fully. In the elevator, I watched my reflection again, but now something was different. My posture had straightened. My shoulders, once sloped from years of quiet carrying, lifted just a little. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. A few people stood near the entrance. A delivery man balancing a stack of boxes, an older couple arguing softly about directions. Their voices echoed lightly off the tiled floor. I walked past them toward the exit, but before I pushed the door open, a faint memory nudged me. My son's face when I told him no. That flicker of confusion. That small, sharp moment where he realized I wasn't acting from habit anymore. As I stepped outside, a soft gust of cold wind brushed against my cheeks. Snowflakes landed on my coat sleeves, melting instantly. I tucked my hands into my pockets, my fingers brushing against the corner of my father's envelope again. There was still so much inside it I hadn't understood fully. The briefcase receipt, the structured accounts, the unusual wording of his letter. Questions swirled quietly, not with fear but with anticipation. Whatever he had prepared, whatever truth he believed I would know when the time came. I wasn't there yet. But I could feel myself moving toward it. I walked slowly down the block, the snow crunching faintly under my shoes. Cars passed, their tires hissing over the wet pavement. A bus pulled up at a stop, releasing a cloud of warm air as passengers climbed aboard. A teenager skated past on a board, the wheels clicking rhythmically along the sidewalk cracks. Life had not paused for me, but I had paused for myself. Halfway down the street, I stopped in front of a small bookstore with fogged windows. Inside, a woman my age stood behind the counter, adjusting a display of winter novels. Something about the simple calm of the scene steadied me again. I didn't go inside. I just watched for a moment, appreciating the quiet. Then I continued walking, heading toward the busier part of the avenue. As I reached the corner, my phone buzzed in my pocket, one sharp vibrate, insistent. Then again. I didn't need to look to know who it was. My son. Probably wondering where I was, what I had done, what I was holding. I let it vibrate until it stopped. For the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing to explain myself, soften my words, or carry the weight he placed on me. I crossed the street slowly, the wind brushing my face, the city humming around me. I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that hotel lobby. I wasn't the same mother who always picked up the pieces. Not anymore. And the changes I made today, they were only the beginning. I kept walking with that thought circling inside me like a steady, quiet drumbeat. The winter air brushed against my cheeks again, colder now, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. I welcomed the cold. It sharpened my focus, matched the clarity forming inside me with each step. My son's phone call had gone unanswered in my pocket, and for once I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel the old pull to explain myself or soften any edges. I reached the corner where the traffic light blinked red, its reflection shimmering on the wet pavement. A bus roared past, spraying a fine mist into the air. I stopped near the crosswalk, letting a group of teenagers rush by, laughing loudly as they shoved each other playfully. Their voices echoed down the block, full of lightness that felt foreign to the heaviness I carried. But even that heaviness wasn't the same as before. It wasn't weighed down by sadness now, only purpose. When the light turned green, I stepped forward, crossing slowly while the rest of the crowd hurried around me. My phone buzzed again. Then again. A third time. I didn't bother checking. The pattern was unmistakable. My son didn't like silence. He never had. Silence made him feel out of control. On the other side of the street, I found a bench beneath a bare-limbed tree. The branches creaked softly overhead, swaying with the wind. I sat down, the cold wooden slats pressing through my coat, grounding me fully in the moment. Cars passed steadily behind me, creating a low hum that drowned out the rest of the city's noise. Only then did I pull out my phone. 10 missed calls. 6 text messages. 2 voice notes. I scrolled through them, not opening any. The previews were enough. Mom, can you just pick up? We need to talk. You're acting strange. Is this about the hotel? Because if it is. I stopped reading. None of the messages asked how I was. None asked if I got home safely. None acknowledged the way they treated me. They all carried the same tone, restless, irritated, entitled. The same tone he used whenever he felt something slipping that he believed should belong to him. I set the phone on my lap for a moment and closed my eyes. The memory of my father's letter moved through me like a warm current under the cold air. You have more strength than you realize. I felt that now, not loud, not dramatic, but steady. After a moment, I opened my eyes and unlocked my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating not out of fear but because I wanted the words to be exact. I didn't want anger to write them. I wanted truth to write them. I opened a new message. Thank you for revealing yourselves. I paused. The wind brushed against my face again, almost approvingly, urging me forward. I typed the next line slowly, every letter precise. The price of your choices has been calculated and deducted, permanently. I stared at the sentence. It didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. It felt overdue. But the message alone wasn't enough. I needed clarity, not just for me but for them. Not dramatic clarity. Not emotional clarity. Practical clarity. Something that couldn't be twisted or argued with. I opened the photo gallery on my phone and took a picture of the updated will documents the attorney had printed. I framed the pages carefully, the names visible, the signatures clear. The paper looked so final, so official, that even I felt the shift again seeing it through the lens. Next, I took a photo of the loan freeze notice. The text was formal, cold, businesslike. No emotion. No apologies. Just straightforward consequences. I attached both photos to the message. My phone suddenly buzzed with an incoming call. My son's name flashed across the screen. The vibration felt aggressive this time, insistent. I let it ring out while the cursor blinked on the message I was writing. After it stopped, another call came immediately. I silenced the phone, the screen glowing faintly in my hand. I reread the message one last time. Clear. Final. I hit send. The blue bubble popped into place. Delivered. The moment I released my thumb from the screen, a strange quiet settled in my chest. Not peace exactly, just the stillness that comes after choosing yourself for the first time in a long time. The wind rattled the branches above me softly, almost like approval. Then the storm hit. My phone vibrated violently on my lap. First one call. Then another. The screen flashed repeatedly, the bright white light cutting through the dimming afternoon. Then came the text messages, long blocks of frantic typing. Mom, what is this? What do you mean, deducted? Why would you do this? Call me right now. Then his wife. Explain yourself. This doesn't make sense. We need those accounts to stay active. You can't just. I stopped opening them. They all sounded the same. Panic disguised as indignation. A new message arrived, shorter, from my son. How dare you? That one made me exhale a slow, steady breath. How dare I? After years of giving, years of forgiving, years of absorbing every small dig, every manipulation, every assumption that I would always step in, cover up, and sacrifice. That was his question? How dare I whispered quietly, almost amused. A woman walking her dog passed in front of me, offering a gentle nod as she went by. I nodded back, slipping my phone into my coat pocket. I didn't need to watch the screen glow anymore. I didn't need to see the messages piling up like debris. The decision was made. The consequences were theirs to face. But the moment wasn't over yet. Not entirely. I stood from the bench, stretching my legs. My knees ached lightly, a familiar ache, the kind that comes with age and weather shifts. It reminded me I was human, grounded, alive, despite everything. I brushed off a few snowflakes that had settled on my sleeves and started walking again. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just walked, letting the sidewalk guide me. The city lights blinked on one by one as the afternoon slipped into early evening. Store windows glowed warmly, displaying sweaters and candles and holiday decorations. A woman inside a cafe laughed loudly, her head thrown back. The sound carried briefly before fading into the street noise. As I passed a pharmacy, my phone buzzed again. Not a call this time, a voice note. My son. I hesitated, then pressed play softly, holding the phone close to my ear. His voice was tight, strained. Mom, listen. I don't understand what you're doing. Just call me. We can fix, just call me. He sounded younger. Not like the grown man who had left me with a bill that morning. More like the child he used to be when something didn't go his way. But there was something else too. A hint of fear beneath the frustration. I deleted the voice note without replying. As I continued walking, I passed a church with its doors open. Warm light spilled out onto the steps, and a soft hum of a choir rehearsing drifted into the street. I didn't go inside, but I stood for a moment, listening. The voices blended together, low and steady, filling the cold air with something gentle. Something hopeful. After a few minutes, I walked again. At the end of the block, my phone buzzed once more. A final message from my daughter-in-law appeared on the screen. You just ruined everything. I read it slowly, letting the words settle. Then I typed a short reply. Not everything. Just what never belonged to you. I hit send. The message delivered instantly. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and kept walking, my steps steady, the cold air no longer biting but refreshing. Behind me, the city pulsed with noise. Ahead of me, the sidewalk stretched long and open. The storm I unleashed had only just begun for them. But for me, something calmer was beginning to take shape. And I wasn't afraid of what would come next. Those words stayed with me as I kept walking, letting the cold evening settle across my skin like a thin, bracing sheet. The city lights flickered on one by one, stretching in long reflections across the wet pavement. My phone lay silent in my pocket now, its storm quieting almost as suddenly as it had erupted. I knew the stillness wouldn't last. They would call again, message again, demand again. But for the moment, the world belonged only to me and the sound of my own steady footsteps. I turned down a quieter street lined with tall, dark trees whose last few leaves trembled in the wind. A few blocks ahead, I could see the warm glow of my neighborhood, the familiar shape of the bakery's sign, the soft lamplight outside the small library where I sometimes took my granddaughter on weekends. The sight loosened something deep in my chest. For a moment, I felt like I was walking back into the version of myself I used to be, before I let guilt and obligation shape my choices. When I reached my front porch, I stopped. The wooden steps creaked the same way they always had. A thin dusting of snow rested on the railing. The wreath I hung last week still leaned slightly to the left. Ordinary things. Steady things. Things that didn't demand anything from me. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Warm air met me immediately, the scent of cinnamon from the candle I'd forgotten to blow out earlier still lingering faintly. I hung up my coat and slipped off my shoes, feeling the soft carpet underneath my feet. My living room lamps cast a gentle glow across the furniture, reflecting off the framed photos lining the wall. Some photos were of my son when he was young, smiling wide, full of innocence he once had. Others were of my granddaughter, birthday parties, school events, afternoons at the park. Each picture held a story. But hers always held warmth. I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water and took a slow sip. The house was quiet, too quiet at first until I realized the quiet wasn't empty. It was comforting. Peaceful. Chosen. My phone buzzed again. I didn't rush to grab it. I let it vibrate against the wooden counter, watched the notification light blink faintly. When I finally picked it up, another message from my daughter-in-law appeared. "We're coming over. This isn't over." I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling neither fear nor anger, just a steady resolve that surprised even me. Then another message from my son followed. "We deserve an explanation." I placed the phone face down and walked to the living room window. Outside, the streetlights cast golden halos across the snow. A couple across the street laughed as they shuffled up their driveway, arms linked, snow swirling around them. Their joy was soft, uncomplicated. I wondered when my life last felt like that. Then a soft knock at the door. Not loud. Not angry. Just tentative. I turned slowly. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't shorten. If anything, the knock solidified everything. The choices, the changes, the clarity. I walked toward the door, each step measured and unhurried. When I opened it, my son stood there, bundled in a jacket, cheeks red from the cold. His wife hovered slightly behind him, arms folded tightly, chin lifted as if preparing for a confrontation she believed she'd win. "Mom," he said immediately, voice tense. "We need to talk." I stepped aside just enough to block the doorway without appearing obvious. "About what?" He looked confused, almost insulted that I wasn't rushing to let him in. "You know what? Those documents you sent. What is going on?" His wife chimed in before I could answer. "You can't cut us off like that. You can't just freeze things without telling us first." "I already did," I said quietly. Her eyebrows shot up. "Well, undo it." "No." The word slipped out effortlessly. Clean. Final. The kind of word I'd never allowed myself to use with them before. My son took a step forward. "Mom, please. We're in a tight spot. You know that. You put yourselves there," I said, my voice steady. "Not me." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't you. What happened today? Did someone tell you something? Did something get in your ear?" I stared at him for a long moment. "Yes," I said. "Your behavior." His wife scoffed loudly. "So you're punishing us? Over one weekend? One misunderstanding?" "It wasn't one," I replied calmly. "It was years." She opened her mouth, a retort ready, but I held up a hand. "And it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a revelation." My son's face hardened. "What does that mean?" I took a slow breath and stepped fully into the doorway. "It means I'm done sacrificing my well-being for people who don't think twice about sacrificing me." His eyes flickered, something sharp appearing and then fading. "So this is it? You're choosing to cut us off." He glanced at his wife. "Over money?" "It was never about money," I said. "It was about respect. And choices. And consequences." Silence fell between us, heavy and unyielding. The cold air swirled around our feet. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms tighter. "You're making a mistake," she snapped. "You're going to regret this when—" "I won't," I said. She stared at me, stunned into silence. My son swallowed hard, voice dropping. We thought someday you'd help us with the future. With the house. I didn't let him finish. I'm tired of being seen as a future you can withdraw from, I said gently. I'm a person. A mother. A woman who deserves dignity. He blinked rapidly, trying to form a response. But before he could, another sound broke through the tension. A small, familiar voice from behind me. Grandma. I turned. My granddaughter stood at the base of the stairs in her pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit. Her hair was messy from sleep, her cheeks warm from the house's heat. She looked at me, then at her father, then at her mother, confusion clouding her little face. Why are you talking outside? She asked softly. My heart tightened, not painfully but protectively. She was the only innocent piece in all of this. My son seemed startled by her presence. Honey, go back inside. We're talking to Grandma. She shook her head. Grandma looks sad. I crouched down, brushing a hand over her hair. I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm okay. She studied my face with those big, earnest eyes that always saw right through me. Are they being mean? Behind me, I heard my daughter-in-law inhale sharply. Excuse me. My granddaughter didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes on me, waiting for the truth. And I realized in that moment that this was the twist my father meant in his letter. Not the money. Not the accounts. Not the documents. It was this child. The one who saw me. The one who chose kindness without being taught. The one who had inherited something far more valuable than anything on paper. I picked her up gently. No one can be mean to me anymore, I whispered. My son's voice cracked. Mom, please. I straightened, holding her in my arms. You will face what you created, I said softly. And I will finally live in peace. My daughter-in-law stepped forward, her face flushing red. You think you can just... I shook my head. Don't finish that sentence. My granddaughter tightened her arms around my neck. I kissed her forehead. This house, I said quietly, is hers one day. Not yours. Not because of punishment. Because she actually knows how to love. The words hit like a quiet thunderclap. No shouting. No drama. Just truth. My son looked at the ground, his shoulders sagging. His wife glared at me with a fury that had nowhere to go. You should go home, I whispered. Neither of them argued this time. They turned, defeated not by anger but by the consequences they finally understood. When the door closed, silence returned, soft, warm welcome. My granddaughter leaned her head against my shoulder. Are you okay now? I nodded. Yes, sweetheart. I am. And for the first time in years. I truly was. I carried her to the couch, held her close and listened to the quiet hum of our home. A home built on dignity, not demands. Outside the wind softened. The snow settled. The storm was over. And I ended the story exactly where I needed to be. In peace with the one person who deserved my future. If this story touched you, shocked you, or made you feel seen, subscribe. I share stories that honor every woman who has ever been underestimated. Your support keeps these voices alive.